human resources, human capital, people and culture. This single vocation has many names. HR professionals are responsible for what is arguably the most critical success factor within any organization. It's talent. HR Studio Podcast brings you interviews from HR and industry thought leaders so you can listen, learn and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates. To learn more about our sponsor, please visit ajoconnor.com and be sure to check out the AJO blog for additional HR learning tools and resources.
Welcome to HR Studio. This is your host, Kyle O'Connor. I'm excited today. This is the first time we're actually doing this, having two guests at once. I think this is going to be really important because it's going to tell a story for our aspiring HR leaders, how you work together. I want to introduce from Canvas, Aman Brar and Kelly Lavin. And I want to just take a moment to thank both of you for being on the show and really discuss today your vision for this and how you collaborate together and also really inspire future HR leaders to think outside the box, what the two of you are doing. So thank you for being on the show.
Really super pleased to be here.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Great. Now, if we could I could spit out an intro right now, but that could be a little boring for people. So I would love for the two of you just to tell a little bit about yourselves and the vision for your organization, what you are, and things like that to really, I think it would come from you a lot better than me. So if you don't mind just sharing that with our audience.
Great. So I think the thing that's really important about Canvas is that much of the leadership team here worked together at a previous company. And so me and Kelly and Jared and others are just really proud to found and get Canvas off the ground. But we previously scaled and exited a cloud computing management company from about 50 employees to over 1,500 after an acquisition. Kelly was our chief talent officer through that journey. And so when we were thinking about what was next, we really just saw a lot of pain points as we were scaling from an HR and talent acquisition perspective. Canvas is really the product that we wish we had through that journey. So when we formed the team, we wanted to make sure that beyond technology, that we had a great kind of recruiter and client success program and someone that could really, empathize with those in the talent space. So it was just a natural fit to make sure we had someone like Kelly helping us get the company off the ground and engaging with talent professionals every day. So I've spent my career in the technology space. It's been a lot of fun. Welcome to check out my background on LinkedIn. But Canvas is the most fun I've had, and I'll let Kelly take it from there.
Yeah, so my background is actually in HR. I've worked in several different industries. Started off in manufacturing. I also worked in media, and then I joined Apparatus. And as Aman mentioned, kind of had a big challenge in front of me in terms of scaling and growing an IT company where skill sets were in pretty high demand. So this was actually a natural transition for me. The HR space, I've always said is, HR professionals are tasked with kind of being good at a lot of different things like customer service and with, understanding financials and all of those things. And so it was a natural progression for me to jump in and help Aman and Jared to work with our customers that we have that are in the space that I love and adore.
That's great. And I could tell just before we started, this wasn't even on an interview, I'm guilty of I was like, let's get going. And you guys are just so genuine and asking, tell us a little bit about yourself. So I could tell that that's in your culture. And I would love for you to just go into detail about, what is your culture before we even talk about what is Canvas, because you could tell it's contagious and you guys kind of exude it. So how does the culture fit with you guys, or how do you fit the culture, would you say?
Yeah, it's we don't spend a lot of time formally answering this question, so it'll be fun to see Kelly's perspective. But I think one of the things we believed at Apparatus is that your team should also be a part of that culture creation process. And so I think one of the things that we're being careful with is we had a culture at Apparatus that worked and was purpose built for that mission. And I think while we're certainly carrying over some of those genes, right, like being nice and friendly and accountable and good problem solvers, I think we're also making sure that we don't overly prescribe our culture too early and that we kind of let this take a life of its own. We launched in June. It's only been about 6 months, and we've got a great team. And we want to make sure that those additional team members that we continue to bring on to Canvas are part of that culture creation process. So we certainly have some guiding principles and thoughts, but I think we're also just letting the answers kind of come to us to make sure that it's not just me and Kelly and Jared defining the culture based on what we knew before. Kelly?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that we make the mistake sometimes as HR professionals of saying, I am building a culture that is X, Y, Z. And I think that the key is to really think about what are those non-negotiables and kind of guiding principles that you want to live by, like honesty, like no drama, making sure that you're working hard, that you are, a good teammate to all of the other people in your organization. And then beyond that, I think it's really about letting your employees kind of then drive the culture and give them kind of the opportunity to kind of build and create kind of what it is that that they want and that they can thrive in. And I think that, in terms of our culture here, as Aman said, I think that we do have some kind of things that have carried over, but I think that it's going to be a kind of living, breathing thing as we continue to grow and scale as an organization and bring new people on, because we want to hear their voices as well.
That's great. It's a good building story. I like that.
Yeah.
Excellent. So can you go a little bit into detail about your platform? How have you seen it help HR professionals? What are you seeing out there? And just an overview 101, what is Canvas, and how it could help an HR recruiter or someone that needs this platform?
Yeah, so we fit in really dramatically at the top of the funnel, and then continuing on with logistics and follow up with candidates. So we launched June 13th as the world's first text-based interviewing platform. It's been an amazing ride since then. We've got clients, everyone from OpenTable in downtown San Francisco to global pharma and biotech companies like Roche to manufacturing firms. And I think the thing we're most proud of is we have clients that are recruiting and screening everything from welders and machinists to physicians and nurses to software engineers and even pilots. So it's been an amazing ride for us thus far. But with the analogy that I draw out on why the platform is so powerful is, living in this world of phone calls, which really isn't a consumer preference this day, is also a scale limiter, right? So as a recruiter, you can only perhaps schedule and perform maybe 4 or 5 screens in a day. In our world, you can be meeting with literally 10 times that number of candidates per day. So it's a better experience, higher response rates, meeting people where they are, giving candidates an opportunity to be thoughtful and to interact with the company. But then also recognizing that it's only one lens on talent, and you're still going to move forward with the traditional interview pathway, but it helps you make smarter decisions. And if you're capturing that data, you can do really, really interesting things with machine learning. Like when we click one button, you can de-identify and gender neutralize that candidate screening information for a hiring manager, right? So it just kind of speaks to the power of the platform. And the last analogy I'll throw at you is imagine if Bumble or Match worked where you were scheduling phone screens with everybody that you're interested in, right? It'd be awkward and it wouldn't scale very well. So I don't think the talent universe should be immune to thinking about asynchronous modes of communication to get to know each other.
That's great. It's just another tool to someone to have in their arsenal. So that's good. Yes. I think it's a great platform. So how did you come up with this idea? I know you have the talent acquisition background, you worked in that area. How do you just all of a sudden decide that you're going to create this and scale it? That's incredible.
Well, I think, Kelly and I and Jared, we spent, no doubt 80% of our time talking about talent and the fuel to our company for growth. And so I think, it gave us just a lot of time, multiple years of working together, thinking about the opportunities in that space. I think that was really, kind of that simply, we kind of thought there's an opportunity. We saw time and time again, a candidate where we'd have a so-so phone screen, right? Or they might say, oh yeah, they're kind of introverted. They didn't say much. They were okay, and then they come in for an interview and they're like pretty amazing people. Right. And then 3 months later, they're like leaders in your company, but yet the record about the first phone screen was, yeah, they were all right. You know what I mean? Like, I just felt like, what is this thing with the phone screen where we think somehow our ears are magical and we're just going to suss out through someone's tone of their voice that they're either going to make it or they're not here. And it just felt like we could be a lot more conscientious and kind of scientific in that approach to open up windows and opportunity for people.
Great. I think it's talent's everything in an organization. It really is. So any resource is going to help the leaders make those decisions. And I like that example. It's funny. First impressions are everything, but once you get to know someone, it could be a completely different scenario. So it's good to hit them from different angles, definitely. Yeah. So what's your vision for the organization right now? What's next? Where are you headed? Where do you see this thing going?
Yeah, I think we're really proud of the fact that we're just capturing really wonderful data on behalf of our clients, so they can help drive smarter decision making around talent. So I think we're excited that within a few months after launch, we're able to make a huge dent on reducing unconscious bias in hiring practices. We're able to drive recommended answers to questions. So today on our platform, if a candidate texts in and asks about benefits, it serves that answer back to that candidate. So just driving efficiency for those recruiters to manage a number of conversations. But ultimately, I think where our interests are is helping a company through the data that we're collecting make smarter decisions. And I think that's really the core of what Canvas is about.
Excellent. Kelly, I would love to ask you, having your pulse and the two of you, how you communicate together. How do you go about acquiring new talent? Do you use, obviously you probably use some of your platform, but how about like the actual, I would say soft skills, or what do you look for when looking for talent for your organization?
So right now, you're right. We absolutely use our own platform, and it's absolutely been amazing. I actually have an interview with someone that is a potential person to join our engineering team, and I was just telling Jared, who runs kind of all things technical for us, that I really loved the package that he sent me via Canvas. You can kind of email the resume and the transcript of the conversation. And I said, I can kind of already feel like I know this guy before I even meet him tomorrow, which is an amazing thing, because I think that so many times the candidate gets asked the same question, each round of the interview process. And it's not great for the candidate experience. And so I think our intention is to continue to evolve in this using Canvas, to continue to deepen our ability to get to know the candidate through a lot of different prisms. So not only get to know how they communicate, in writing, how they communicate once they've had some time to process, but then also just that other angle that's a little bit more traditional about kind of how do you get to know them, verbally and in person, et cetera. And I think that all of those angles are really important, and some of them have been kind of passed over. And so I would say that the way that we end up kind of finding talent for Canvas is through using Canvas. Honestly, I think that we believed in the concept before we had it, and we believe in it even more now that we've seen it work for so many other recruiters and so many other companies.
Great. Very cool. How could you guys walk me through a day-to-day between the two of you, how you communicate together and how you plan?
I love Kelly's perspective.
Yeah. How often do you two interact? I think this is an important question, because I know it's very granular, but you see so many organizations that don't do this enough. Communication's key to everything and success. And you two seem to have it with the communication. So how do the two of you check in with each other, or how often do you communicate? I think that's really valuable for our audience.
Yeah. So I would say that first and foremost, one of the keys, I think, for aspiring HR professionals is to make sure that as they are selecting their organization and the leadership team that they're working with, that they are interviewing them to the extent that they're finding leaders who really understand the value of talent. And so Aman and Jared are two such leaders that really understand the critical nature of making sure that you are finding the right talent and that you are kind of giving them the ability to grow in your organization. And so, as far back as Apparatus, and even, now we are in constant communication. As Aman mentioned, Jared and Aman were in my office probably 80% of the time, because they understood the critical nature of talent and the reasons that it can make or break your business. And I think that, in terms of the way we communicate, I think that we have an amazing dynamic. We have the ability to be pretty honest with each other, and we come from very different perspectives, right? Because I kind of have the one perspective, and then he's kind of looking through a different lens, and so I'm not going to say that we are always on the exact same page, but we do kind of figure out a way to work through it, because neither one of us is willing to give up on making sure that we're doing the best thing for the company and for the employees that we're working with. And so I think that is first and foremost our commitment. And then, we end up, having conversations through multi-channels many times a day. I mean, whether it's through Slack or through email or late night phone calls, whatever else it might be, we end up kind of in constant communication with each other. And to me, like, that shows how much they care about and get the value of the talent space.
One analogy I use often is, we're like a high performing team at a Michelin star restaurant, right? Where the kitchen in the summer, can get hot, and it can get stressful, and there can be pan fires here and there, and you get on each other's nerves.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the night, through this amazing about these amazing meals that you serve to these wonderful clients, right? So like we just kind of view it like pan fires are to be expected, right? Yeah. And the thing about pan fires is they come and go really quickly, right? And so we use that analogy a lot to kind of explain our culture, because we are very direct, we're very friendly. I mean, probably not more than 45 minutes ago, we're jonesing each other and getting each other under each other's skin, but we're laughing about it at the same time, right? Yeah. And so, I think I think that high trust piece is very, very important to us, because direct feedback's been, a carryover from our last culture to this one, and it's really kind of multilateral direct feedback. Like, we just want to make sure we can talk about real issues, and we never want to be that company. We use this analogy a lot. Like a big company, someone comes in or they're practicing a presentation. You go, oh yeah, that's really great. And then that person leaves the room. You're like, man, slide 4 was just crazy. It didn't make any sense at all. It's really, that's like the norm, right? And it's just kind of an insult if you think about it. Yeah. And so we'd rather just talk about slide 4 in the room and how do we all make that better, right? And so that's an analogy we use a lot to explain our culture to people that are, joining it for the first time.
That's great. I love transparency is great, because then you could fix things a lot faster. You know where you sit.
Yeah. And we have a lot of fun. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm the distractor in the room. So I'd say that hand in hand with all of this intensity is just a desire to have a lot of joy and satisfaction through the process.
Excellent. So for your own, we think about our audience who's listening to this. We're really targeting like people that are into professional development. What resources do the two of you really tap into to keep current or to develop yourselves as leaders in your organization? Is it it could be anything. It could be a book. It could be a podcast. Anything that you really get personal enjoyment out of that helps you grow as a leader.
So I have probably a lot of different. I do like to listen to books in my commute. I have also some blogs that I follow. The HR Capitalist is one that I've followed over the years, and I've really appreciated kind of his unique perspective on the talent space. And then the other thing that I'll do, I also listen to things, and I've also throughout my HR career tried to focus on things that are also outside of the HR realm, so that I can kind of stay in touch with the pulse of everything else that's going on in the world. And so, SaaStr, the SaaStr podcast is one that I've listened to a lot, just to kind of grow in my knowledge of the startup life. And then, there'll be various books that Aman will recommend that are, kind of helpful just in rounding out my development. But I would say that if I have any advice for HR professionals is to make sure that you're diversifying your listening and your reading and your consumption of different types of media, just to make sure that you're staying on top of, whatever industry they're in, also to make sure that they're staying on top of the trends in the industry. Just make sure that you're not, myopic in the way that you're learning and growing as an HR professional.
Yeah, I'd second all that. And I think Kelly and I are prone to recommending things like Headspace and mindfulness meditation to people. And some of our other favorite books are The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, a great read. Influence, Psychology of Influence, another great book. So I think we're pretty voracious learners and readers, and whether it's through formal sources or informal. And I think one of the things we really believe in is just talking to real people. Like I would say, the thing we're doing the most is having discussions about what we can learn. Whether it's from our clients, whether it's from our investors, whether it's from the ecosystem. One of the things we did with Canvas is we really kept it no secret before our launch. I mean, for multiple months, we were sharing the idea really coast to coast, right? I was in Silicon Valley, I was in the Midwest, I was in New York City, with a slide or two, just explaining it conceptually, and that has helped shape kind of the version of the product that we launched with. So I think we're just kind of constantly screening for great ideas from our network and people that we can talk to.
Great. Those are great resources. Thank you. And Kelly, you stole my last question. I was going to ask, so you have to give another one for this.
I knew I would set myself up for that.
That's all good.
I'm happy to think of something else.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. So I was going to ask the two of you, what advice would you give to, that the next level of HR leader, that person that wants to become a leader like yourselves? If you had to go, someone told me once, like, what would you tell the younger version of yourself? Which advice? So I think that would be a version of it, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say.
So Kelly might laugh, but I would say take even more risks than you're thinking about taking, right? So I think I've taken a lot of risks in my career, and I've had a lot of learnings from the good and the bad in that. And if I could go back, I'd actually take even more, right? And I felt like I took a lot, but I would probably take even more risks. And lastly, I would say, think about, Jim Collins talks about this a lot. Think about the who, not the what. So go work for great people, really echoing Kelly's perspective. And don't worry about, a salary being, 57.5 or 55,000 and making a decision on that, right? It's like, who are you going to work for? What are you going to learn? I think is the thing that you need to optimize on.
Yeah. And I absolutely second that. I think that as you are assessing kind of your first and your second and your third positions and whether or not to, move or grow or, change companies, whatever it is that people are thinking about, I would say that, especially early on in your career, optimize less for, what you're making and optimize more for how you're going to grow and what you're going to learn. And are you putting yourself into positions where you are going to stretch yourself a little bit? And I would also say that especially early on, this has been really helpful for me. Just make sure that you are building really strong relationships with those leaders in your organization in order to make sure that you are able to understand all of the nuances that are happening within your business so that you can continue to kind of have a really good, sense of kind of what you need to do in order to help the organization. I think that we spend a lot of time, thinking about things from our perspective and trying to prescribe, kind of what is best without listening first. And so make sure that, I think that HR professionals, especially early on, should ask a lot of questions and do a lot of listening and learning to make sure that they are understanding kind of what makes their business tick, what's keeping their leaders up at night, so that they can then understand kind of what's needed from an HR and talent perspective.
Great advice. I like it a lot. It's really good. So how would you want people to contact you? How could they keep in touch? How could they follow you? Social media to close out today. Where do you want people to go to check you two out?
Sure. First and foremost, check out gocanvas.io. So gocanvas.io. And then my Twitter handle is a great way to stay in touch with me at Aman Brar, AMANDBRAR.
Excellent. How about you, Kelly?
Yep. So Twitter is at Kelly W. Lavin. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, and I would second, first and foremost, go on to our Canvas website. You'll find a lot of information, not only about us there, but also about Canvas and kind of how it's really kind of revolutionizing the recruiting industry.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll have this all linked up in the show notes so people can see how to get in touch with you. So I want to thank the two
Awesome.
of you for your innovation in this industry and really pushing the whole, talent acquisition piece forward. It's really exciting what you're doing, and keep up the great work. And we appreciate your advice for everyone.
Thanks a bunch.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Sorry for all the noise on the computer. It's life in startup. Just
It's all good. It makes it more authentic, right?
yeah, exactly. Sorry, well, I do apologize. I thought I hit the do not disturb, and apparently it still was doing the audio. So
It's all right. Hey, it's part of the life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, man. Really
thank you so
appreciate it.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. To download the show notes and discover additional information from this week's episode, please visit hrstudiopodcast.com. To join the conversation, we invite you to visit our LinkedIn group, where you will connect with a growing community of current and future HR leaders.